Lord, I love you. Lord, I need you. God, you are my joy.
Because my heart,
and Lord, if there's anything that is standing between me and you, God, strip it away. I want to be close to you, Lord. Close to you.
may you delight in me.
Oh God, may you delight in me, because my heart, it longs for you. Yeah, right where you are, yeah, in me, oh Lord, may you delight in me, every way, Lord, may you wanna be pleasing in your sight. Nothing feels better than being with you, God. Just to be in your presence alone. So I get to you.
Close to thee, close to thee, close to thee, close to, I wanna be close to thee, close to thee,
Yeah.
close to thee, close to, I wanna be close to thee,
Closer, freedom, closer, blessing, closer, healing, closer. No other place I can run to, no other place where there's love, no other place where there's joy, no other place where there's hope. I am safe in the arms of Jesus. No weapon formed shall prosper against me. Oh.
Okay, let's see if we got any sound here. We should be up and going now. Okay, is there sound now to those who are watching online? All right, give me a thumbs up or put in the chat if you got some sound. Okay, it's okay now. All righty, good. Um, I was saying we're good morning and good evening to those who will be watching later today at 7 o'clock. We're on 3 different channels, social media channels, Facebook, of course, and then YouTube. And then there's an Instagram, Arlington Road Church of Christ Instagram. I want to encourage everybody who has not subscribed to YouTube to go ahead and do that. There's some benefits that come with the more subscribers we get, the more benefits we get when we have a number of subscribers. So go to the Arlington Road Church of Christ YouTube page and subscribe to that. And we also ask people to, if you're on Facebook, to like, comment, and share. What's really important is to like and share. I don't want you to think your comments are not important, but if you don't do anything, try to share it so that your friends will be aware of what we're doing. We're in Mark chapter 9. We took a break last week, but we're going to look at Mark chapter 9. And I want to read verses 30 through 41. And if I had to give this Bible study a tag or a lesson, I would just say two major questions. Two major questions. In this narrative, you're going to find two questions. One is going to be asked by Jesus himself to his disciples. And then the other question is asked by the disciples to Jesus. And it's going to be interesting when we look at both of these questions. One of the things I want you to be thinking about is humility. Humility. How would you define humility? How would you define it? How would you describe it? What is an example of humility? I think that's going to be real important as we look at the lesson on today. Just some inside stuff for church family members. This coming Sunday ends our building fund drive. We'll keep the building fund out there, but we had a 3 Sunday drive, and let me continue to thank members who are making a contribution to that. Also, every member should be on a ministry. We had a ministry fair last year, and if you can send an email or call the church and let us know what ministry you signed up for. Now, all ministries should have a chairperson or a leader. So we're asking the leader to also send in that information. What ministry do you lead, and who are the members of the ministry? So what we're doing now is just evaluating what we did last year. We signed up last year. How did it go? What do you want to do different? Do you need any? Does your budget need to increase, decrease? What are your plans? What are your goals? We've lost a couple people who were leading some ministries, so I'm looking to replace or put someone over a couple ministries, that kind of thing. All right. So I think everybody can hear me now, and we'll get going. Mark chapter 9, and we're going to start reading at verse 30. Now, the first 3 verses you can find in Matthew chapter 17, verses 22 and 23. Also Luke chapter 9, verses 43 and 45. The second narrative you'll be able to find in Matthew chapter 18, 1 through 5, and Luke chapter 9, verses 46 through 50. The first question, the first narrative in this passage that we're going to read is Jesus foretelling his death. Then they departed from there and passed through Galilee, and he did not want anyone to know it. For he taught his disciples and said to them, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him. And after he is killed, he will rise the third day. But they did not understand this saying and were afraid to ask him. I want to come back to this. This is kind of hard just to skip over and read, but I want to come back to this because this verse number 31, the Son of Man is being betrayed. And I'm talking to Bible students. So who betrayed Jesus? Bible students. Say it louder so the people online can hear you. Who was it? Judas, right? Okay, all right. And then verse number 32, they didn't understand and they were afraid to ask. I want you to be thinking, why are people afraid to ask about things they do not understand? You know what? And keep this under the heading of humility. So there are things we do not understand, but we are afraid to ask to get an understanding. I think I already know the answer to that question, but I just want you to be thinking about that when we come back. So the first three verses, verses 30, verses 31, verse 32, Jesus foretells his death. In this next section, we look at an attitude of servanthood. Then he came to Capernaum. So he's traveling from Galilee to Capernaum. And when he was in the house, he asked them, what was it? Here's the first question. What was it you disputed among yourselves on the road? But they kept silent, for on the road they had disputed among themselves who would be the greatest. And he sat down, called the 12, and said to them, if anyone desires to be first, he shall be last of all and servant of all. Then he took a little child and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken him in his arms, he said to them, whoever receives one of these little children in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. Now John answered him, saying, and here's the second question. So we got two major questions. The first question is asked by Jesus in verse number 33. What was it you disputed among yourselves on the road? The second question, which creates a lot of controversy today, but I got something to say about it. I'm not saying that what I have to say is authoritative, but I sure have a take on it. And the question that John answered him, teacher, we saw someone who does not follow us casting out demons in your name, and we forbade him because he does not follow us. But Jesus said, do not forbid him, for no one works a miracle in my name can soon afterwards speak evil of me. For he who is not against us is on our side. For whoever gives you a cup of water to drink in my name because you belong to Christ, assuredly I say to you, he will by no means lose his reward. That's the reading of the text. All right. So let's walk through the text and see what we can get out of the text. Why there's a song we sing, and sometimes we sing it during the communion service. Why did my Savior come to earth and to the lowly go? And then the chorus says, because he loved me so. The purpose of Jesus coming in the flesh was to die. It took his death to save humanity. He had to die. I mean, that's really what it was all about. And slowly but methodically, Jesus starts preparing them for the ultimate. Oh Lord, Jesus, help me there. We're born to die. I mean, we are born, but no one is going to live on this earth forever. We don't start thinking about it until we get older or until something starts happening with our body, but we're born to die. I didn't think about death when I was a teenager. That wasn't in my mind. I mean, even though I had family members to die, my mother died, my grandfather died. Those were the two memories that I had growing up in my teens. My grandfather and then my mother. But you don't really think about your own demise. You don't think about that. Then as you get older, sometimes circumstances in life will force you to give it some thought. And you'll start thinking about it. But Jesus left heaven and became flesh for the purpose of dying. I mean, that's what he came to do. When he selected the 12 at age 30, and then he spent 3 years with them, he started preparing them for his demise. Now, when you read different accounts of the gospel, sometimes they were shocked, sometimes they were surprised, or sometimes they just didn't get it. In John the 13th chapter, he starts preparing them by washing their feet, and then he teaches them this lesson in humility, which is going to be connected to what we're going to talk about in just a few moments. But they get shocked and surprised, and then Jesus says things like this in John 14: "Let not your heart be troubled. If you believe in God, believe in me also. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you." He's preparing them. And then he said, don't lose heart. I'm not going to leave you comfortless. I'm going to send you another comforter. All of that is to prepare them for his departure, his death. So he tried to calm them and comfort them and get them ready. But there were times when they just missed it. So after the transfiguration, and then after they came down from the mountain and they had the encounter with the man whose son was a lunatic, and the father brought his son to the disciples, and they could not cure him. After Jesus had this frustrating moment with them, because if they had enough faith, if they had the kind of faith that had fasting and prayer, they could have taken care of the problem. So now he does not want anyone to know where he's traveling, because it's going to get very intense after this. It's going to get intense from a psychological aspect, because even though he's God, he's also human, and he's got to prepare them for his departure, but he's got to prepare himself as well. Now, what I want to focus for a moment is, for as he taught his disciples, he's teaching his disciples, and he says to them, the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of men. So I asked earlier, who betrayed Jesus? And you responded how? Judas, all right. Did Judas sneak up on Jesus? Jesus knew it. He knew. All right. How do you treat your enemy? How do you treat someone that you know doesn't have your best interest. Now, this is not someone you suspect, but someone that you already know. And sometimes in relationships and in relationships, you might know things about a person and they don't know that you know it. You know something about a person, but they don't know that you know about them. So you can kind of be a certain way with them, and you know all the time they don't really mean what they say. You know all the time they got another motive. You know all the time half of what they saying ain't true. All right. So you play the game and you put on the face and but in your mind you kind of really want to grab them by the neck and give them a piece of your mind. But how did Jesus treat Judas? One of the things that he did with Judas is, well, when Judas betrayed him in the garden, Jesus called him a friend. He called Judas friend. How did he treat Judas prior to the betrayal? He washed his feet. Judas was one of the 12 that was sitting at the table. So even though Jesus knew Judas meant him harm, Jesus didn't retaliate. Jesus didn't. Now, when you talk about being Christian and you talk about being spiritual, it takes a whole lot of Holy Spirit and a whole lot of Christian in us not to retaliate. Say amen, somebody. It takes a whole lot to keep it in. And Jesus knew, he knew that he was going to be betrayed into the hands of men. Now that betrayal was by Judas, but it involved a lot of other people. Judas had to go and make the deal with other people. So the deal was, I'll turn Jesus over to you for 30 pieces of silver. I know where Jesus is going to be. That's all. This is street talk. Now, sometimes it's good not to let folk know where you are. Don't let everybody know your whereabouts. You don't know if they're trying to set you up. This is street talk now. Shouldn't be like this in the brotherhood. Shouldn't be like this in the church. But Judas had to set it up with the chief priests and the authorities. They arranged, they made the deal. But then even after Jesus was arrested, you got Pilate, you got Caiaphas. You got, I think, was it Annas? You got a number of other people involved in the betrayal. And this is not street talk, but this is just talk to help us get to heaven. Be careful not to get up in other folks' betrayal or plot. Just keep your distance. Keep your distance. Just because I don't like you, it does not mean that others have to not like you. You can have problems with a person, but don't project your problem that you have with a person onto other people and try to gather them in to feel a certain way about a person because that's the way you feel. Let's be honest. Deal with your own feelings, whether they're right or wrong, but don't try to make your perception of others appear to be right by getting a group of people to gather in. Y'all gonna help Bro Crusoe. Y'all gonna thank Bro Crusoe later on. Y'all be standing on my grave and y'all be saying, Bro Crusoe sure did tell me the truth. I didn't like it sometimes, but that preacher sure told me the truth. So there are people that we have problems with, but you have problems with, but don't go knocking on people's door trying to find out, do you have a problem with her like I do? Don't get caught up in the betrayal plot that others may try to get you caught in. So what Jesus says is the Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of men, and they will kill him. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. And after he is killed, he will rise the third day. Now, um, watch what happens. But they did not understand this saying. Well, you haven't been listening. This ain't the first time Jesus is talking about his death, his burial, and his resurrection. But I can only imagine what might be going through some of their minds. Well, we've seen you heal the sick. We've seen you raise the dead. We've seen you cast out demons. If you can do that for others, can't you do it for yourself? All right. But keep in mind what I just said. What Jesus did was for others. So who's going to raise him from the dead? It's blowing their mind. Well, we saw what you did. You walked on water. You fed hungry folk with a small amount of substance. But now you're talking about going to the cross, being crucified, being buried, and then being resurrected the third day. One of the things I'm glad about is Jesus is specific. I mean, this is going to happen. I'm not going to rise on the first day. The second day is going to be the third day. It's not going to be the fourth, fifth day. On the third day, I'm getting up from the grave. Now, I asked earlier, why is it that people even today do not understand a concept, but are afraid to ask to get an understanding? Why is it we can be sitting in a class and not understand what's being said, but we are afraid to ask? Sister Buford, from your background in counseling and psychotherapy, help me out. Sister Crusoe, so the Edmonds, Brother Myrick, not putting you on the spot, but why is it that people, and this is not a Bible question, but this is a question of, it doesn't even have to be a church setting, but I don't understand, but I'm afraid to ask. Embarrassed. Afraid. Okay. And the embarrassment has to do with what? Fear of being wrong and peer pressure. Now that's what I was waiting for. The fear is I don't want other folk to know that I don't know. Okay. I remember, I said this is the year of transparency. I remember preaching. I preach on lectureships. I preached on this lectureship, and they recorded it, and then they were doing a promo. So I wasn't the only one that they recorded, but I noticed, okay, I'm preaching, and then they pan in the audience. They pan the audience. And there was a preacher in the audience who I had a lot of respect for. And I was making this point, and because I could hear my voice, but they had the camera on him. And he just frowned like, how in the world could he say that? That, like, I could see it on his face. Man, that ain't right. How could he say that? So whenever I'm around this dude now, I'm kind of like embarrassed. I'm kind of like, and it's been so long ago, I can't even bring up what it was and that kind of thing. So I can understand the embarrassment part. How, and then when you get around a bunch of preachers and we start talking about things, and but irons sharpen irons. So what I want to say, we shouldn't be afraid to ask, because if irons sharpen irons, you're just trying to get information. You're trying to get knowledge. So, but if you come across like you know it all, then you're going to be embarrassed and afraid to ask. But we kind of understand the human dynamics where sometimes we don't understand and we don't want to be embarrassed by asking. One of the classes I was taking in grad school on the postgraduate work, and there was a woman in the class, and she tickled me because the professor would be teaching, and she would like raise her hand. She said, and she'd always say, excuse me, but I have a question," you know. And she said it in such a humble way, but her question was not challenging. It was more of a question. Hey, I don't understand. She would say, excuse me, I have a question. I have a question. May I ask my question? And he would always address it that way. So what we have here in the first three verses, 30, 31, 32, they did not understand this saying, and they were afraid to ask him. Keep in mind, he had just rebuked them for not healing the man's son. So in the back of their mind, they might be thinking, we don't want to come under the wrath of Jesus. We don't want to hear him rebuke us. We'll let this slide. All right. But now here comes the first question. The first question. Then he came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What was it you disputed among yourselves by the road?" All right. Now, the first episode, they are afraid to ask when they don't understand. Watch their response now to Jesus' question. Jesus is asking them a question. What was it you disputed among yourselves on the road? But they kept silent. Y'all see that?
Yes.
But they kept silent. Now, this is why they kept silent. For on the road, they had disputed among themselves who would be the what?
Great.
The greatest. Now. Jesus just told them he's going to Jerusalem. He's going to be killed. He's going to be buried, but he's going to rise the third day. And what's on their mind is, who's going to be the greatest? It's almost like, okay, if Jesus is going to leave, which one of us going to take his place?
Right.
Who's going to be in charge now?
That's right.
All right. Now, you know what this really is? It has to do with pride. Now, pride is the enemy of humility. And pride is also the enemy of unity. And whenever there's an element of false pride or selfish ambition, it's going to affect the unity of the group. And I think that's one of the reasons why Jesus is addressing this. He already knew what was going on, but he's giving them an opportunity to be honest. Hey, fellas, what was y'all disputing among yourselves on the road? Let's read some of the other passages to see if we can get some more detail. Someone get me Matthew 18, verses 1 through 5. Sister Edmonds, if you'll get that. Brother Russ, will you get Luke chapter 9 and look at verses 46 to 50? Even on a basketball team, and I know this for sure, the unity of a team can be affected when the guys stop being humble and they start being selfish. The unity in a church can be affected the same way. When we don't know our roles, when we don't stay in our lane, all right? When we get out of our lane and get in somebody else's lane, and selfishness and pride and ambition gets in. Man, I'm teaching today. Brother Robert said, I didn't even know it was going to be this good, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. Sister Kim, wave at me. Yeah, I had the members waving today. Wednesday morning Bible class was so excited, Kim started waving. All righty. Matthew chapter 18, and if you will, read verses 1 through 5 for me.
At the time, the disciples came at that disciples came to Jesus, saying, "Who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven?" Then Jesus called a little child to him, set him in the midst of them, and said, "Assuredly I say to you, unless you are converted and become as little children, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever humbles himself as this little child is, the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one little child like this in my name receives me."
Now, what's important, what caught my attention is that first verse. They came to Jesus and asked, all right, they came and actually asked him, Jesus, which one of us is greater? Like, okay, we know that you take Peter, James, and John away from the 12, and you got an intimate relationship with them. They've seen things the rest of us didn't see. So, which one out of the three is greater than the other two? Or which one out of the 12 is greater than the 11? Do you see the problems that could present? All right, that's going to present a whole lot of problems. All right, Luke chapter 9, and let's look at verses 46 through whatever that's 50. Yeah.
46 through 50. Luke chapter 9, it reads as follows. And an argument arose among them as to which of them was the greatest. But Jesus, knowing the reason of their hearts, took a child and put him by his side, and said to them, "Whoever receives this child in my name receives me, and whoever receives me receives him who sent me. For he who is least among you all is the one who is great." John answered, "Master, we saw someone casting out demons in your name, and we tried to stop him because he does not follow with us." But Jesus said to him, "Do not stop him, for the one who is not against you is for you."
All right. All right. So now we looked at all the synoptics. There's another passage of scripture where the mother of Zebedee's children asked Jesus to grant her sons special seats in the kingdom. All right. Pride. All of that is pride. All of that has to do with selfish ambition. And Jesus saw that taking place among the disciples, and he nips it in the bud. So he asked the question, what was it you disputed among yourselves? But they kept silent. For on the road, they had disputed among themselves who would be the greatest. So can you imagine how that would be in a church setting? All right. People start saying, who's the greatest? Who's gifted more? Sometimes even in a brotherhood setting, we base greatness or giftedness on numbers. So preachers get together. How you doing? How your church? How many folk you got? How many folk have you baptized? And then if your numbers are not where other folk numbers are, the folk with the higher numbers think they're better than the folk with the lower numbers. So you got 100 members. If you don't have 100 members, we don't even consider you a church yet. How many folk have you baptized? Are y'all, what kind of ministries do you have? So there are times when we base our greatness on our personal achievement. Now, don't get me wrong. I think a church ought to be baptizing. A church ought to be involved in ministry. But at the same time, let's not be comparing ourselves and then trying to make yourself feel superior because your numbers are better than somebody else's. Now, how would you describe or define humility? What is humility? How would you define that? Jesus saw they got an ambition problem, and he saw that they have a selfish problem. And he saw that if I don't nip this in the bud, this is going to affect their unity. And one of the things after his resurrection, and this is a good thing when we start talking about the unity of the faith, uh, Paul and Peter had the kind of relationship where they wasn't competing against one another. You don't never read of Paul saying he's a better preacher than Peter. You don't read where Peter claims to be a better preacher than Paul. But both of them mention each other in their writings. Paul said, well, I had to confront Peter to his face because, he was being hypocritical. Peter said that there were some things of Paul that were hard to read and understand. But you never find Paul saying, I baptize more Gentiles than Peter. You never find Peter saying, well, I preached the first gospel sermon on the day of Pentecost. You don't find James, and I'm looking at, or John the apostle, competing with other preachers and saying that they were a better servant because of the numbers that God used them to achieve. So, anybody got any thoughts on humility, or how would you describe humility? What does it mean? Some people pronounce it, they say humble or humble. I've heard people say humble. They leave the H off and just use the U. Humble, humility. All right, I'll give you some time to think about it. This is what Jesus did. And he sat down. Now, what's happening here is Jesus said, this is a teaching moment. I see the 12 disputing, arguing with themselves. Can't be like that. Y'all different people. You all have to get along with each other. I got to get this competition out of their mind. So what Jesus did, he takes the position of their rabbi, their teacher. He actually sits down. He takes a sitting position, which is a teaching position. He said, I need to teach them. This is a teachable moment. So he sat down and he called the 12 and he said to them, if anyone desires to be first, he shall be last of all and servant of all. So what Jesus is showing him, if you want to be great, the way to be great is by being a servant. The really way to be the greatest is to be last. Now, in our society, no one wants to come in last. Team sport. Bro, Myra played football. I played basketball. We don't want to come in last. We don't play to come in last. We play to come in first. Brother Robinson was in the military. Sister Dobbs has a daughter in the military. When you go to war, you don't want to be last. You want to win, right? But the Christian perspective is to be great, you make yourself last. To be great, you humble yourself. You have a humble attitude. Let me kind of get, there are people in the kingdom who do a number of things, but you would never know it. There are people who do things behind the scenes and they don't want a pat on the back. They don't want their name in the bulletin. They don't want to be publicized. They just want to serve. They serve because they know their master Jesus served. And they don't do it for the applause. They don't do it uh, um, to win a Grammy. You know, what did Jay-Z say? Jay-Z went up there and took that award, but Jay-Z said, look, uh, that his wife has more nominations or Grammys than other folk, but she's never won Album of the Year. And he probably, you know, from the Facebook thing, he told some truth. People are saying facts, truth. But a Christian perspective is, even if you are unnoticed by your peers, you still serve, because your service is not done for your peers. Even, well, let me say, like, it's not done for the applause or the appreciation of your peers. Now, human nature knows you like to be patted on the back. You want to be shown some appreciation. But Jesus said, if anyone desires to be first, you got to put yourself at the back of the line. Is this making sense? All right. Then he demonstrates humility by taking a child, and he sets the child in the midst of them. Now, there was a time when children were innocent. Are y'all hearing me? We ain't talking about no 12, 13-year-old hard-headed child. We're talking about an innocent child. Can you think back in time when life was just innocent? You know, can you? I can. I can think back when, man, I was just an innocent child. I mean, even if I did something wrong, it was innocent. Okay. I know. You know, I worked in. I worked at a rec center, a recreation center, and I think my hours was 3 to 10, 3 to 11, 2 to 10, or something like that. Because I would go to school in the morning and then have a lunch break and then go straight to work. Did that for a while. And then the kids would come after school to the rec center, because that was like it wasn't a daycare, but it was like we were babysitting them until the parents got home. Those kids were just as bad, cursing me out and, hard-headed. And some of the kids we had to ban from the rec center because they were so bad. But at the same time, there is a time when children are innocent. They're just good, plain innocent. So what Jesus did, he took a child. And when I look at this, Jesus had the kind of rapport with others where children felt comfortable coming to him. Because this is not the first time that he would use children in illustration. So he took a little child and set him in the midst of them. And when he had taken him in his arm, he said, whoever receives me or receives one of these little children in my name receives me. And whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. So what Jesus does is define humility as the innocence of a child. Children are impressionable. Children can be easily influenced. Children sometimes are open. Children will ask questions, and not because they're trying to challenge you, but they just want to know. You know, I remember I had an uncle who I thought knew everything because he was just like the kind of guy, as a child, when I would ask him questions, he always had an answer. And he impressed me. I just thought he was the smartest man in the world because he always had, as I got older, I realized he was faking. You know, some of his answers wasn't true, but he was just acting like he knew everything. But there were questions like, sometimes children will ask a question, and they why, and then you just get frustrated with them, and you just tell because I said so, because you don't really have an answer for the question because you never thought it through. It's just the way things are. So children sometimes will ask questions when they didn't ask questions, but they didn't understand. I heard a preacher say humility, if you break the word humility down, you get the word humiliate. So when you humble yourselves, you are humiliating yourselves. And to be humiliated is not a good feeling. No one likes to be humiliated. But what does God do with the humiliated? Anybody remembers God resisted the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. All right. Humiliation is what Jesus went through on the cross. Humiliation is what he went through when he was betrayed, when he went from judgment hall to judgment hall. He was humiliated. And Paul would later say he became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. He humbled himself and became obedient to the death. So when was the last time you felt humiliated? When was the last time that you humbled yourself and took the back seat and allowed someone else to take the front seat? When was the last time you volunteered to be last and serve? Think about that. No, we always want to be right. We want to prove our point. We want them to see it from our perspective. Why not let God elevate you by being humiliated? You don't always have to have the last word, because if God is in it and scripture is true, God resisted the proud, but he gives grace to the humble. So humiliation, humbleness. So the first question is, what was y'all arguing about? and what were y'all disputing about? And it was about who's going to be the greatest. Now, after Jesus makes the statement, whoever receives one of these little children in my name receives me. Whoever receives me receives not me, but him who sent me. The New King James Version says, John answered him. Now, this is John, the apostle whom Jesus loved. That's how John described himself, that he was the one who Jesus loved. This is John when Jesus was on the cross. He said, woman, behold thy son, and son, behold thy mother. So John is one of the inner circle three. Now watch this, and we might want to come back to this again in the future. Teacher, we saw someone who does not follow us, casting out demons in your name, and we forbade him because he does not follow us. Now, what they're saying is, we saw somebody not part of the 12. We saw someone not part of the 70 that was sent out. But he's over here casting out demons by your authority. He's using your name, all right? But he's not part of this group. Now, there are people who take this passage to justify denominations. Now, there are people who use this passage to say, well, we're all serving the same God. I don't argue with people. Sister Kusa and I was out eating, and one of our members has a relative that works at the restaurant. So from time to time, we'll have a little conversation, and sometimes I always get around to asking, do you work on Sundays? Are you free? Because y'all know where I'm going. If y'all free on Sunday, well, come visit us. And at one time, she told us the last time that we were there, she said, well, we all serving the same God. And that's probably true. That is true. That is not the point of contention. We are serving the same God. The issue has to be we're not serving him the same way. So we can serve the same God, but worship him differently. And that's the issue. The issue is not who we're serving. And Jesus is going to tell his disciple, don't stop the man from doing good. You know, let him keep doing what he's doing. Because he's not against us. He's really helping us. So the man is doing a good work. You do not have to be a member of the Church of Christ to do a good work. Say amen, somebody. There are good people who are not part of our fellowship. Now, I was listening to some denominational preachers' take on this passage, and they went in the direction of there are essentials and non-essentials. And they mentioned, like, there are Baptists, there are Methodists, there are Presbyterians, and they don't agree on certain things. So we have to determine what's an essential and what's a non-essential. And I think what Jesus is saying here is doing a good work in his name is not a bone of contention. You don't stop a person who believes in Jesus from doing a good work. Because if you leave it to the Church of Christ to do good works, we're not doing a whole lot of good works. I was reading an article that Jack Evans wrote back in, I don't remember what year it was, but it was during Black History Month. And he mentioned at that time, there were only 2 churches that he was aware of in our brotherhood who had a senior citizen facility. And that was the Schrader Lane Church, and then there was one in Fort Worth, Lake Como Church of Christ. Well, if someone would write a letter now, there are other churches that have senior citizens facilities or church-based, one in Oklahoma City, and then I started one in Memphis. But compare our numbers with numbers of our faith neighbors, we're not going to get the job done by ourselves. I do not believe that this text endorses denominationalism, because there's too many scriptures that says, let there be no divisions among you. There's scripture where Jesus prayed for unity. Paul talked about the unity of the Spirit in Ephesians chapter 4. To be unified does not mean compromising your doctrinal beliefs. Jesus is not talking about worship here. He's not talking about how we worship. He's not talking about music or women preachers. That to me, that's an essential. That's an essential to our worship. So I don't bash denominations who do good works. Don't bash them. But do try to teach them that if you're going to serve the same God, we ought to worship that God the same way. That's a salvific issue. So if I'm serving God and calling on the name of the Lord, and Jesus said it like this, why do you call me Lord, Lord, but do not the things which I say? So Luke 6:46, Matthew 7:21. So when I look at this passage, I don't see this as an endorsement of denominationalism. I simply see what Jesus is saying in verse 39. Do not forbid him, for no one who works a miracle in my name can soon afterwards speak evil of me. So Paul even said it like this in Philippians chapter 1. Some are preaching for pretense, some are goodwill. Some are preaching to add affliction to my bonds. But Paul was just glad that they were preaching Christ. Their motive may have been wrong, but he was glad that Christ was being preached. So I think our efforts to save folk out of false worship should continue. We try to help a person who's a good-natured person, a good Christian, has a good Christian heart, but their worship is wrong. And there's a lot of young people who, who don't buy into that. But I still believe that God has determined how we worship him. And that worship is not left up to us, but is determined by scripture. And the challenge is to get everyone to worship God in spirit and in truth. Okay. So I was asked this question in a gospel meeting, and one of my responses was, Jesus did not tell the 12 to go join this person who was casting out demons. He said, leave him alone. Let the person continue to do what he's doing. What we have today is people are starting to fellowship with other faith groups, and the lines are being blurred where you don't know one group from the other. And I'm just being out there, Church of Christ ministers who are now fellowshipping with Christian churches that have instruments of music. So it's almost like, well, if you come to my place, we're not going to have music. But if I go to your place, I'm going to preach and you can have your music. So the lines are blurred. The color lines are blurred. Jesus did not say, go and join this man. Jesus is simply saying, leave the man alone. If he's not, and let me just say it like Jesus said, do not forbid him. Oh no, for he who is not against us is on our side. But he's talking about good works. But it takes good works and obedience to the doctrine to be saved. Do not minimize the doctrine. Do not minimize worshiping God in spirit and in truth. Don't fall into this fallacy. We're worshiping the same God, but we worship him differently. It's possible to worship the same God the same way. And the way you get to that is just go back to the book of Acts. They continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, breaking of bread and in prayers. Romans 6:17, they obeyed from the heart that form of doctrine. So you just go back to the New Testament. How did they worship then? And how are we worshiping now? And if you're not satisfied with the biblical record, then there's a historical record that records what the New Testament church did. So I think I said it in a non-threatening way. And what I try to convert people on is because Baptists and Methodists, Catholics, Presbyterians, Churches of Christ, Lutherans, Pentecostals, we believe some of the same things, but we don't believe all of the same things. And so while we struggle with what the essentials are, I think I'm going to go on record. Worshiping God is an essential. It's not a non-essential. It's an essential. I'll leave it at that because I got to say something else publicly, nationally, next month. But I'll say, any questions, comments before we close? Anybody come up with humility? Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to add, I was out yesterday and I take what they give out.
Mm-hmm.
They're giving out the free food.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with a faith-based organization doing a good work. Now, what I think there's a principle in 2 John 9 when it talks about someone coming into your house with a different doctrine. And, I will not allow a Jehovah's Witness to teach me They knock on the door, and I'll try to teach them. And one of the things that I share with folk is, if you're talking to a Jehovah's Witness and they want to set up a Bible class to come into your house, uh, what I have said to them, I don't mind studying with you, but meet me at my church. And when you tell them to meet you at their church, they're gonna back out, okay? Because what they teach their members is not to go into a building of another religious group other than the Jehovah's Witness. They will. I think some Jehovah's Witnesses may even have some trouble coming to a funeral if it's not in their building. You see, and what bothers me sometimes is they can be that loyal to their tradition, and we so wishy-washy on ours. Jehovah's Witnesses do not apologize for being a Jehovah's Witness. All right, y'all don't have to apologize for being a member of the Church of Christ. You don't have to be mean-spirited about it, but be so committed that it catches the attention of others. I keep telling y'all, one of the ways we grow our church, y'all don't believe it yet. Y'all, I told y'all when I was working social services in Chesterfield, and I would invite this lady. I tried to invite this lady to come, and she said, "Look, James, my preacher preached so good, I just hate to miss any of his sermons." And I just wanted to hear one of his sermons, because she said that. If y'all go around and tell them, "Oh, my preacher preached so good," they're going to say, "Well, let me listen to him on Facebook. Then maybe I'll come." Yes, ma'am.
I was just thinking, like, when I'm in the hospital, I don't want to pray. I don't pray with them. Like, they come by my room. When my daughter was in the hospital, we have all kind of people want to come in. They want to pray with her. And I don't, no, I'm going to wait till my husband, we're going to pray. I've already prayed for her. I was even one of the nurses, not a nurse, but an aide, when she was in there. She wanted to come in and stand on the side of the bed and pray over her. I don't know. We can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
I'm praying. That's why I'm here. I'm praying for. So, because I don't know what spirit you bring, and so just like I say, Jehovah's Witness, it's certain things that they're not going to do with us, and there's certain things I'm not going to do with them. So,
Okay.
I'm not afraid to show my faith, what my faith is in.
Yeah.
That doesn't have anything to do with you. But for what I am, when I'm laying on the bed, I don't know if you're going to get up. I want the right spirit praying over.
Okay. Good points. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Why do they teach that? Why do they teach them?
I don't know for sure, but I would imagine that Jehovah's Witnesses feel that they are the one true church. And I think Jehovah's Witnesses feel like they are the witnesses for God, and they are taught to bring others in, and then they are so loyal to that. And I haven't met a Jehovah's Witness that was mean-spirited, but I have met Jehovah's Witnesses who were loyal to what they believe. They're just loyal to it, and they are effective to a certain degree. I mean, people will obey it, and I could tell you a lot of stories, but our time is running out. They're very loyal, and this is, I will say this: when Romans 16 says we obey from that heart that form of doctrine, there's doctrine out there, and then people obey the gospel, and then they're brought to that doctrine. So that means, like a Jehovah's Witness is, you're going to become a Jehovah's Witness. This is what we believe and teach. This is what you embrace. So when we baptize folk, they become New Testament Christians, and this is what we believe and teach in churches of Christ. This is our legacy. This is our faith tradition. This is what we stand on. I mention this all the time, and I don't mean no disrespect. A sigma, a Q, a kappa, AKAs, deltas, all have a philosophy or a tradition. And then when you think about joining those frats and fraternities, you're brought to their system, you know. So, you know, if you're a Q, you don't make this thing, because that ain't the Q sign, I don't think. I don't know what the deltas, you know, I don't know. You make the sign of what you are, and you're loyal to that. And our faith is so wishy-washy and wimpy, and we're on the fence sometimes. And there was a time when our faith was a lot stronger. And I still want to say, you don't have to be mean-spirited, but if you're convicted, that conviction will catch the attention of others. All right. Thank you for coming. Look forward to seeing you all on this Lord's Day. Keep in mind, if you signed up on a ministry last February, please indicate what ministry that is. If you're a ministry leader, indicate that either by the email, or you can call the church, or just send us an email so that we'll have it. Brother Murray, will you give us a closing prayer? All right. Okay.
Pray for the Jones family, for Deborah Jones, who is very ill. She can't walk. That's my brother Melvin's wife.
Okay.
And for their oldest son, Melvin Jones III.
Okay.
Yeah,
What is that, the Church of Christ?
Talking about across, we're online, y'all. We're talking across the street, right?
yeah.
Melvin Jones, Melvin's wife. Okay. All right. Here you go.